It is a Monday morning here on Birds 365. We got a football week coming your way, including a game at the end of it on Friday, but we got a lot to do before we get there. Thanks for tuning in to Birds 365. McDonald, Kerr in for McMullen in the host chair, but Johnny Mack starts the show as he's getting his day ready before the long week that the Eagles have before they take on the Jets. Jeff Kerr, you first. How was your football weekend?
It could have been better. I'm getting tired of watching backups already. We got 20 days until the Eagles opener. I cannot wait.
Only one more week of preseason, but you're right, almost 3 4 weeks before the week gets underway, which means John McMullen's got to work, including getting COVID testing today. Is that your main duty, McMullen?
That is my main duty. You can't go to joint practices, can't go to the game unless you get that clear COVID test. So it's the world we're in.
Okay. Yeah. So John will get his COVID test, but before he does, he's going to hang around and talk with us for a couple of minutes. I don't know about you, John, but I'm feeling more optimistic about the Eagles today than I did the last time we were on the air on Friday, because that was immediately after the 35-0 beatdown. I guess 48 hours has dulled my memory of how bad that was. Eagles got in a practice yesterday afternoon, was supposed to be last night, instead ended up yesterday afternoon because they canceled the public practice. I judged it as I was out there last night when it was supposed to happen, walking a dog. It wasn't raining where I was at over here in South Jersey.
It was sunny when I left my house in South Jersey. So, yeah, I mean, I think it was a combination of, they knew a ton of people weren't going to be there. Maybe this is my cynicism. And obviously it did start raining later. Remember, they moved up practice. But, yeah, it was a little bit strange. It is for charity, though. So I do feel bad for the fans. Obviously, they only get to look at the Eagles preseason twice. So the ones that were coming, obviously it's not going to be rescheduled, nothing of that nature. That's it. So we're going to show up for week one, and you get to see what you get to see, your Eagles. But yeah, I mean, Jeff is right. Preseason football is a tough slog to begin with. And obviously the way the Eagles are playing, look, and it's not meaningful. And you're right when we were talking Friday, Jody. I mean, yeah, you got to feel better. But I do give Nick Sirianni credit for being honest. And the fact is, you have these two camps are like, you got to throw preseason out the window because the Eagles are playing so poorly. Now, if they were playing well, trust me, they'd have a different take. And when you look at 52-0 over the last 6 quarters of football, and, it took them 88 minutes to convert a third down in the preseason, well, turn those things around. If the Eagles had outscored their opponents 52-0, there'd be some hype around this team. Trust me.
John, one thing I worry about with this whole Nick Sirianni rest thing, and I totally get it, but I feel like he's playing with fire a bit, putting a lot of pressure on himself for Jalen Hurts and that team to be ready week one.
Well, 2 things. Number one, it's not him. I would say that. This is an organizational decision. You can read that any way you want. I think if it were completely up to Nick Sirianni, they'd be preparing more. I'll just say that. So that's number one. And I get the cost-benefit analysis of what the Eagles are doing. I get it. I understand it. So it just comes down to what side you agree with. And they're obviously have gone through a number of seasons now where they've had significant injury problems, and they're trying to get their key players as healthy as possible to week one. And they are eliminating some preparation time to do that. And it comes down to which side you believe in. And they've staked their claim about which side. And you can make a strong argument that they're correct. And you can make a strong argument from the other side. And I would be on the other side. I don't think, I say this all the time. I know Jody disagrees with me a little bit. You can't legislate injuries. I get that it seems like I get that, but this is a contact sport. Injuries are going to happen, especially with younger players. And we start with the quarterback with 4 career starts. I mean, I'm not going to tiptoe around his development to get him to week 1 completely healthy. I just think preparation is more important.
I don't know where you and I disagree. We're on the exact same page, sounds like to me. So let me put this to both of you guys. Jeff, you certainly have an Eagle slant, but you covered the whole league. Johnny Mac, I know you got sources across the whole league. If you said it without saying it, John, that Howie Roseman is dictating terms here as to who's getting reps, who's practicing, who's not, how many snaps in the game, that they have a big meeting, and how he kind of dictates to Nick Sirianni. We don't know that, but we believe that. Oh, by the way, I definitely believe that. Is there any other team in the league where the general manager at this stage, these last few days, these last few weeks, leading up to the 2021 season, is as hands-on dictating terms as Howie Roseman is to Nick Sirianni? Is this the number 1 spot in the NFL where the general manager is calling the shots as to who's playing, who's working out, who's resting, who's protecting an injury? Are the Eagles the number 1 team in the NFL in that way?
I think they are. I mean, the closest thing I could probably relate to with all this is the Rams with Les Snead and Sean McVay. But Snead and McVay, they collaborate on this. It's when they don't play starters in the preseason, I think Snead goes to McVay, hey, I don't think we're going to do this. And McVay agrees because McVay don't like playing starters in the preseason anyway. And, Snead basically lets McVay dictate everything himself at that regard. Like Matthew Stafford, not even a consideration. No, he's been in the league, 11, 12 years? No, he's not playing. And, I think Snead does have a role in that. But overall, at least in my opinion, they're probably the closest to what the Eagles do. But I don't know. Maybe it's just a local thing. But I don't see the Giants doing this. I don't see Dallas doing this. Washington, no. It's definitely an interesting dynamic. I think John has more of an intel on that, though.
Yeah, I mean, I am immersed in the Eagles, so I don't know what's going on in the 31 different other NFL cities that closely at this point in the season, just because you get so immersed in one team. But if there is a team, and I encourage our listeners, if there is a team that is preparing less from a practice time standpoint, from a player standpoint, I mean, I'd like to see it. I mean, point them to me, point me in that direction.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple. Jeff brought up Matthew Stafford. I mean, Aaron Rodgers didn't play. I saw Green Bay. I mean, we're talking about, as Jeff said, 11-year veteran. We're talking about one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. We're not. I guarantee you, if Aaron Rodgers retired and Jordan Love was getting prepped, he'd be playing in the guaranteed. There's a big difference between Aaron Rodgers and even Matthew Stafford and Jalen Hurts. How can people not see that?
And the thing that bothers me is it seems like, again, you know better than anybody because you're there every single day, Johnny Mac. It's completely Howie Roseman's show. And if you're going to hire a guy to become your coach, and they did that with Nick Sirianni, and they run Doug Peterson off, and I get it, he's never been a coach before, but the coach should have at least a partial control of his team, a percentage of control of the team, which I don't think Nick Sirianni has right now, which I have a big problem with. But all right, let's put that aside for a second. Talk about a couple of guys on this team as we move into week 3 of the postseason. John, both in the games, you report all the time from practice. Zach Ertz is probably the receiver that the quarterbacks, and I'll put them all in there because Jalen Hurts doesn't play all the time, sometimes because he can't, sometimes because they're protecting his rear end, but I'll put all the quarterbacks in the mix. Zach Ertz seemed to be the most dependable guy. I know that Watkins had the big couple of plays in the first preseason game, but what did he do this past game? Nothing. So Zach Ertz seems to be the guy. That whole Howie Roseman is just getting him out there to showcase him and trade him thing seems to be going by the boards because Zach Ertz seems like too important a piece of this year's Eagles team to think about moving on. Is his name still being shopped around this league, do you believe?
Yeah, I mean, I think if the Sam Bradford scenario we always talk about happens at the tight end position, a contender loses one, they think they need one to continue on. I think he would trade him still because he's not going to be a long-term piece here. And by the way, I don't disagree with that from a standpoint. Then we just talked about the dynamic, the head coach, GM, owner throw in there as well. Yeah, I think if you talk to Nick Sirianni, he wants Zach Ertz. I've said it from early in camp. From the skill position standpoint, by far, Zach Ertz has been the best player on the Philadelphia Eagles in practice. By far. It's not even close. Miles Sanders is dropping the football. Devontae Smith missed 2 weeks. He got banged up again yesterday. He's outplayed Dallas Goedert at tight end, certainly from a receiving standpoint. Dallas obviously has always been and always will be a much better blocker. Yeah, I mean, Nick Sirianni would want him, but does he? It's not like he can put his foot down and say, I need this guy for week one. He probably does need him, but long term, he's not going to be here next year. And it would have to really be, because if you think about it from this standpoint, guys, if he stays and plays well, the Eagles aren't going to want to pay him. And if he doesn't play well, they're not going to want him. So it's very, very unlikely he's going to be here next year, no matter what. So from that standpoint, I get it. But yeah, the head coach, it's the old, you're on top of something versus the 10,000-foot view. Nick Sirianni would certainly want him. Howie Roseman, if somebody gets nervous and gets desperate and he has leverage and he can get a second-day pick, Zach's gone.
John, one thing I noticed, and I think Mike Kay reported this weekend, that I guess the Jets are looking to trade Keelan Cole, and I know Schefter kind of backed that up about half an hour later, that their Jets are looking to move on from one of their receivers, or they're looking for a pass rusher or something like that. I know the Eagles have pass rushers available, but it just seems like that's too steep of a price for just a Keelan Cole. I'm just trying to play GM.
Yeah, I don't know. I always look at from the other team's standpoint, because I know people get really mucked up in their own teams, and they don't. So you have to think of yourself. Well, if you're Joe Douglas and you're the Jets, okay, are you going to pick up Derek Barnett's contract for 1 year? I mean, are they desperate enough after losing Carl Lawson? Maybe, but I think people don't look at it. So they're just looking at it as player versus player. Now, if you throw Josh Sweat at him, yeah, I'd say, yeah, he wants that, but you're not going to throw Josh Sweat at him. So to me, it's not as natural a fit as maybe it seems on paper because of the contracts. But yeah, I mean, the Eagles could use some help at receiver. I don't know how they cannot be concerned, because the one guy that can play is banged up pretty consistently, and the other guys who've shown flashes, boy, I got to tell you, that Jalen Reagor route running is a concern for me. There's just no consistency there. And Quez Watkins, we're skipping steps on Quez Watkins. That's a 6th-round pick from last year, and people expect him to go in and be a really, really impactful player. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Johnny, you kind of touched on this. I want you to expand on it. You mentioned running down Zach Ertz, outperforming everybody else, practice in, practice out, body of work, all the other Eagles skill position guys. And that Miles Sanders continues to drop the football in practice, and everyone gives him credit because he's working on the sidelines. He's got that jugs gun going every single day, and it looks like he's putting in all the effort to improve, and then he continues to drop the football. Will that affect the Eagles' play calling during the year? Will Nick Sirianni go, listen, I'd love to throw it to Miles because we know when he gets his hands on the ball, if he catches it, he's a playmaker and can make big plays for us, but you got to catch it first. Will the continued drops in practice affect the Eagles when the season starts as far as play calling goes?
Yeah, I don't know about as far as play calling, but as far as personnel, I think they've already gotten to that point where they're expecting and trying to ramp up Kenny Gainwell to be in that sort of role And Nick's been very honest that he expects the running back situation to be by committee. So it's not going to be a 3-down type of Miles Sanders situation where he's always on the field, which is good and bad. I think it makes it more difficult for the coaches and the play caller because obviously if you got a guy out there who's going to run the football and you got a guy out there who's going to be a pass receiving back, you sort of have that natural tip off to the defense. But that's Nick said that's our job. Our job is to make sure that that's not an issue. But yeah, I mean, Miles is struggling, and it is strange because he does work so hard on the side. He looks great on the side. He catches everything, and then he goes out in live work, and it's not even live, obviously, live practice work, and he drops the football, and he dropped one again yesterday. Tough to explain. I other than the yips, Nick has mentioned he has problems with those angle routes coming out of the backfield. Maybe he doesn't get his head around quickly enough. It's more than just hands. He seems to have the hands to do it. Maybe he doesn't track the football well. That was Nelson Aguilar's problem for years as a receiver. But it is tough to overlook, and you just can't put him out there unless he gets better as a receiver.
John, I'm a bit concerned about Travis Fulgham now. All of a sudden, he's on special teams all the time, and he's only playing 10, 11, 12 snaps. It just seems to me like instead of being a roster lock, he may not even make this roster.
Yeah, he's played himself out of a starting position, and now he's trying to play himself off the roster. He had another bad practice yesterday. Another strange one. Obviously, Quez Watkins has passed him. Greg Ward is out playing him. So you start talking about, okay, how many receivers are you going to keep? 5 or 6? I don't know when your receivers are this poor why you would consider keeping 6. And those, those numbers, 5 or 6, generally have to help on special teams. So the Eagles are throwing Travis Fulgham out there and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and John Hightower. And ultimately, maybe the decision comes down to who can help Michael Clay the most, the special teams coordinator, more than the offense, because all 3 of those guys just haven't looked like NFL receivers during this training camp. And it's disappointing. I mean, we're constantly talking about this position with this team, and they use a first-round pick this year, a first-round pick last year, a second-round pick. And then you talk about even late-round picks with Hightower and Watkins, how much they've thrown at this position, and they can't get it right. It's unbelievable.
John, let me follow up on the point you were making about special teams could be the decider as to who makes this team, who doesn't in the receiver position. I don't know about you, but I've always been told by coaches, special teams is about 75% attitude and 25% talent and athleticism. That you win special teams, kind of like rebounding in basketball. You want it, you go get it. And I believe that about special teams. Out of the 3 guys you mentioned, Hightower, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and Fulgham, who's got the best attitude for special teams? Because if you can tell me who that is, I'll tell you that's the one who makes the team.
It's a good question because I think you're right. And I think, one of the issues with special teams in the NFL is you generally get guys who were stars in college and didn't play special teams, and then you got to shift them and convince them that this is an important part of their game. None of the 3 have stood out. Yesterday we were inside, so you get to really be on top of things and really see things. And it's not one of the 3 I talked about, but it was Quez Watkins who was on special teams. And versus Avonte Maddox, who's, obviously a defensive player and knows what he's doing. And they were doing the drills when you hit a dummy, and Avonte was just killing this thing. I mean, just destroying it. And Quest Watkins was tiptoeing up to it, like he was trying to surprise it. And a lot of a lot of it is just they're not used to it. They don't do it. And I think that's all of those three receivers. None of them look like Steve Tasker. Let's put it this way.
John, Nick Mullins, I read Ruben Frank's 10 observations yesterday, and I agree with him 100%. I've seen Nick Mullins play for the 49ers. He is not as bad as he's been with the Eagles, but it looks like he's really in danger of not making this team.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now it'd be tough to keep him, and certainly you could get him through waivers and get him on the practice squad. And I wasn't there certainly at the beginning of camp because I'm with you, Jeff. He showed enough in San Francisco to say, okay, this guy should be in the conversation to be a backup, never mind a third stringer in the NFL. I just don't think he's healthy. He doesn't have the arm strength right now. He's coming off elbow surgery, and he says he's fine. But there's no juice in the arm. So, I mean, maybe as he gets further away from the surgery, he was never Brett Favre to begin with, but he was a lot better than what he is right now. So I think a lot of it is he's just not completely healthy. And a lot of it is obviously who he's playing with. And, those third string offensive players are not exactly playing at a high level. And he's among them. So it's not just the other people. He's part of it as well. But yeah, it would be tough to say this guy deserves a roster spot. And I think from the Eagles' perspective, even though you want three quarterbacks, especially in COVID world, you want at least three. I think they're very comfortable understanding that they could release him and get him back and put him on the practice squad.
All right, let me repeat what I said the day the Eagles signed Nick Mullins. And McMullen, please concur with this because you were here and heard it on Bird Street 65.
You don't like Nick
He's
Mullins a little
not
bit.
an NFL quarterback, not a starter, not a backup, not a third string, not a practice squad. He's not an NFL quarterback. The day they signed him, I said it was a mistake, and I still cling to that. And yes, with every passing day, it looks less and less like.
You're a tough grader because there are some bad stinking quarterbacks. Now I'm not talking
starting. Jody.
I like Nate Peterman better than Nick Mullins. That's how bad Nick Mullins is in my eyes, my evaluation. But besides that, and by the way,
then you got to give Kyle Shanahan a lot of credit because he was able to move the football at times for San Francisco, and maybe Kyle is obviously well regarded. He might be the best offensive coach in football, according to people in the industry. So maybe it is Kyle Shanahan, but he moved the football. To say he can't be a third string quarterback, I don't agree.
That's you can disagree with me, but that's fine. I say he shouldn't be in the league. And the Eagles' third string quarterback is on another roster right now. They will bring in another quarterback after the cuts. Nick Mullins will be gone, and the Eagles will pick off somebody else's third-string quarterback. Just a projection from your buddy. Johnny, I want to hit on the DBs. Zach McPherson had that nice week in the middle of practice, and you and all the other Eagle beat reporters got excited. He was getting those pass defended day in and day out. He got abused a little bit in the game against the Patriots. And I'm sorry, maybe I'm too old school that I still care about what happens in an exhibition game. It did not look good at all. I know the Eagles are going to protect him and he's going to be here. It was a draft pick. It was just his past year, so there's no threat of him not making the team. However, I don't know that he's ready to play. And if you're going to play a bunch of dime, and that's dictated by the other team as to how many receivers they're going to put on the field, somebody has to be out there playing. And I'm not really comfortable right now with Zach being one of them. Who is the Eagles' dime back right now? Who's going to actually get a chance to play? We are all worried about who's going to make the 53, but then you got to decide who's actually going to be on the field and play. Corner and or DB is a pretty important position because you can expand it to guys who are going to need to be on the field as per what the other team's doing. How do you rate the Eagles' defensive backs after the three obvious starters? I'll ask you about the second starting safety, but we know who the starting corners are. We know who one of the safeties is going to be, but there's a question as to the other one with health. How does the Eagle DB depth chart shake out for you right now, Mac?
Yeah, I would say if they're going to, you're right. First of all, I want to say about Zach McPherson, he had that good week and he's come back down. But I want to add the context. I always said, Jody, that if you're expecting a 4th-round pick to play right away in this league, you're going to be awfully disappointed at that particular position. So I put that context in there. Yeah, he's not going to play. It's going to be Craig James or it's going to be Josiah Scott. If they go to a dime look or something of that nature. I would think Craig James is a little bit ahead from the perspective of Jonathan Gannon. Knows him. He's played a little bit. And when he got thrown in there, he played actually well. He's a great special teams player, but he's been hurt. He just got back to practice yesterday for the first time in a while. He had a foot injury. And Josiah Scott had a big day actually yesterday. So I would think that they're forced to play guys and they want to play dime. It's going to be one of those two. I would lean towards Craig James first. And Scott is sort of, we just talked about wide receivers. So when you talk about the 53, I'm keeping 6 corners. I'm not keeping 6 receivers, especially in the modern NFL. So I'm keeping James. I'm keeping Scott. You got to keep Zach, and you have the 3 starters. Just because you need so many cornerbacks, and they're going to get banged up as well. But yeah, if they're forced to play somebody, it's not going to be Zach McPherson early in the season. I would be stunned. And if they do go that route, there's going to be some growing pains. It's my old buddy Jim Schwartz said startup costs, and they're significant.
John, I'm a little concerned about the interior pass rush. This is where I agree with Jody. It's hard to take away a lot from the preseason, but they have gotten nothing from the interior pass rush over the first 2 preseason games. Like they have to move Milton Williams back to defensive tackle, right? And then who's going to be behind him?
I don't think Milton's going to play a ton, number one. I do think this is where it's not very meaningful. I mean, when Fletcher Cox is not out there and Javon Hargrave's not out there, I mean, who cares? Those are the guys who are going to play. And those are the guys that are going to play the significant number of snaps. And they're veteran players. So that is an indication where I lean more towards the Howie Roseman side where, I don't care. What you got to do, just get them to week 1 as healthy as possible. And then Milton, they look at Milton Williams, and he played a lot of defensive tackle yesterday because Fletcher was out of team drills. And Javon Hargrave is still out. And he played a lot of defensive end in the game. They look at him like Brandon Graham. That's who they're modeling Milton Williams after, as somebody who can move inside and outside kind of seamlessly. But that's for 2022. He's going to play, but you're talking maybe 15, 20 snaps a game. I'm not, one of the few things I'm not concerned with is the Eagles defensive line. I mean, they're deep and they're talented. The talent just isn't playing right now.
All right, the last one for me, John. Couple of draft picks from last year have, when they've been in practice, when they played, they've actually flashed a little bit, but both have had pretty significant injury issues. Davion Taylor and Kayvon Wallace. Either one of these guys, a potential guy to start the season on short-term IR, because they're going to keep them, but then if they aren't close to 100%, do you put them on IR and have someone else ready to go that you can bring back through either the practice squad or waivers? How are they going to handle both of those guys if neither one of them is 100% at the start of the season?
Yeah, there's a very good chance. I mean, with the more liberalized IR rules under COVID, I mean, you got to keep them on the final 53, and then you can put them on IR and bring somebody back. And they only have to be out 3 weeks. So if they're going to be out that length of time, yeah, I mean, all teams do that now, and they should do it. It's a very smart way to do business. It's a welcome rule. I know coaches and GMs love it because you can only bring back 2 players in the past, and they had to be out for 8 weeks. It's just mind-numbing. So sometimes you would have to, if you thought a guy was going to be back in 6 weeks, you'd have to carry him on the roster, and obviously you lose a spot. So it's been very helpful, and those are the perfect examples of guys that could happen. It's interesting with Kayvon Wallace. He called himself Wolverine and how healthy he is, and then he goes out and he comes back too quickly from the groin and hurts the groin again. I mean, part of it is, and this is the interesting, when we talk about the dichotomy of being safe with certain players and not being safe with other players. I mean, I think Kayvon saw Marcus Epps go in there and probably play a little bit better than him and say, well, I'm not going to have a chance to have the starting job. I'm going to push it. And there's where the medical and training staff might have to slow somebody down like that. But now we are where we are, and he's re-injured. And then look, he was out there yesterday just watching practice. He was moving around. I don't know how serious it is. Remember, we have a lot of time after that third preseason game until week 1. Davion Taylor's been out a long time. They might be ready to go by week 1. And that obviously would be positive. But I do think Marcus Epps has played better than Kayvon Wallace. I do think they want a Kayvon Wallace type next to Anthony Harris. I think they look at Epps and Harris as sort of redundant, as the same types of players. But at some point, you just got to play the better player. And, of course, they're also hoping, the best case scenario, that Rodney McLeod's ready to go.
John, last quick one from me. Kerry Angeline, the Eagles signed yesterday. I've known him for a lot of years. I used to cover him when I was at the Daily Local News. Does he have any chance to make the practice squad?
You never say never with the practice squad now, because it's 16 deep. And the Eagles obviously have lost Jason Kroom, but they do have Jack Stoll, who's not going to make the team. But I would think they would keep him on the practice squad if they can get him through waivers, and I think they'll be able to get him through waivers. I don't think you're going to keep 2 tight ends, but if another injury pops up, you never say never. But you know how this goes, Jeff. Last in, first to go at this time of the year.
All right, John, I lied. I have one more quickie. Under, over 1.5. Number of fights between the Eagles and the Jets in the 2 combined practices. You taking the under or the over?
I'm taking the under. It was the under against the Patriots. Now, Bill Belichick probably has a more disciplined bunch than a rookie head coach. And we have 2 rookie head coaches. So it's a good over-under. I like, and you're going over. Nick has preached discipline, so I'm going it from his perspective. I'm going to give him some credit that he'll have the guys understanding. Look, don't fight, but I could see both sides of it, and I'm going to go under, because they proved they could do it against
be tuned here on Thursday after the second of the 2 joint practices, when John McMullen has to explain the 3 fights that the Eagles and the Jets got in joint practice.
And then you got to explain what a fight is. Like, is a pushing match a fight, or is somebody throwing punches? What are we? I'm thinking about guys throwing punches.
That's fair. Something where 5 or more people are involved.
Oh wow, yeah, I'm going
that
5.
You got to get at least 3 teammates, 2 teammates on one side, 1 team on the other. It's got to be 6 individuals involved to pull people apart. Might not actually be a punch, but it's not just 2 guys. Two guys going mano a mano. That if they're just pushing each other, that doesn't count. Got to have a total of 6 involved in the skirmish.
I'm going to get in honor of CM Punk and SummerSlam, and the man Becky Lynch being back and Brock Lesnar being back. Great wrestling weekend, as Jody knows. I'm going to call that a schmoz in wrestling term, and I'm going under.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going over. I think the Jets and the Eagles will get into it this week. We shall see. John, thanks, buddy. We'll catch you back here tomorrow, early in the show, and then by my side later in the week. Thanks, bud.
All right. Thanks, guys.
John McMullen here with us, usual co-host. Jeff Kerr's got his duties today. I got plenty more to get in with Kerr, which will do just that. Coming back next here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.